The first thing we need to discuss is how we actually burn calories. And the way that we do that comes through 4 different things, 4 different ways, 4 different compartments. And the first one is the most significant, which is your BMR, which stands for your basal metabolic rate. And that is how many calories you would burn if you laid on the couch watching Netflix. Absolutely chilling, doing nothing, not getting up, just chilling there. You could look at it like being in a coma in hospital, just literally existing, just being alive. Your basal metabolic rate is the amount of calories that you burn just to keep alive. All the processes that you need, your heart to beat, your brain to function, blood to be pumping around your body, all the things that goes on in your body. Keeping the lights on. That's your basal metabolic rate. And that's responsible for approximately 60% of the calories that you burn throughout the day. And that baffles a lot of people because we think we burn all our calories in the gym. We burn all our calories when we go for a run. But the biggest portion of calories that we burn throughout the day is actually just from existing, just from being alive. I want you to take that knowledge on board. The second most significant way that we burn calories is something called your NEAT levels. NEAT stands for non-planned, that's the N. E stands for exercise, activity, thermogenesis, NEAT. Non-planned exercise, activity, thermogenesis. And that is your non-planned exercise. That's the stuff that you do without even thinking. That's your walking, that's your fidgeting, that's your touching your hair, that's your tapping your hand on the table, that's your wiggling your knee at the table when you're sitting there nervously or just sitting there in general. Everyone has different things that they do. I use my hands a lot when I talk. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see sometimes when I talk, and especially when I get really into things, I start like throwing my hands out back and forward or pointing to the left, pointing to the right, listing things with my fingers. This is NEAT levels at play, the non-planned exercise. And there's a debate out there that says, is going for a walk NEAT levels because you're actually planning to do it? And I see where they're coming from. I think we're fighting over stuff that doesn't really matter. If you're saying, oh, well, that's actually not NEAT because you plan to do that. It still sits in the basket of physical activity when we look at burning calories, which I'll break down later on. So that's your NEAT levels, and they're responsible for around 20% of the calories that we burn. And then we have EAT levels, which is exercise, activity, thermogenesis. So it's the same acronym except non-planned is in front of NEAT. So exercise, activity, thermogenesis is your planned exercise. We could call it PEAT to make it more obvious. Planned exercise, activity, thermogenesis. So the things that you know you're going to do. You know you're going to go to the gym 3 times a week. You know you're going to go to the gym 5 times a week. You know you're going to go for a run every Monday, Thursday. You know that you got jiu-jitsu class on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This is your planned exercise, and that also burns calories. That fits into your calorie expenditure. However, it's not as significant as your non-planned or your BMR. It's responsible for around 5 to 10%. Obviously, this depends on how much you train. If you're a professional athlete and you spend majority of your day training, stretching, doing yoga, recovering, you're probably going to have a higher percentage than 5 to 10%. It could creep up to 15 to 20 because you're so physically active. But most of us have jobs. We have lives that we have to live. We're not 100% full-time athletes dedicated to physical activity. So it generally will sit around that 5 to 10%. And for people that are completely sedentary, don't even work out, lift weights, play sport, have physical activity hobbies, it's probably going to be more towards the lower end of the spectrum. The last portion is something called TEF, the thermic effect of food. And that is the calories that we burn when we're breaking down food into our digestive system. So that obviously costs energy. That is our calorie expenditure. And this increases, it's around 5 to 10% as well. It increases as we have a high protein diet because protein is more taxing on the digestive system to process. So if we're having a high protein diet, it's going to be on the higher end than if it wasn't. just because it's harder to process, as I just said. So those are the 4 components. Once again, quickly summarizing, BMR we have, which is your basal metabolic rate, responsible for around 60%. We have your NEAT levels, which stands for non-planned exercise activity thermogenesis, which is around 15 to 20% of your calorie expenditure. We then have our planned exercise activity thermogenesis, EAT or PEAT, like I just said, and that is responsible for 5 to 10%. We then have the thermic effect of food, which is the amount of calories it costs for us to break down calories. And that is another 5 to 10%. So somewhere within that range, everyone is different, but you're going to reach 100% of the amount of calories that you burn.